Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and it looks like after 30 years, I'm officially quitting Warhammer 40k, but not by choice. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. So we've got recent news of Codex Imperial agents unleash the might of the Emperor's Inquisition. And so far, the rumors are that Deathwatch is officially over. Many of you guys have been following along over on TableTop Bros as I've been through the Escalation League, built up a Deathwatch army from 250 points, basically scratch, all the way up to over like 3,000 or 4,000 points. I've been traveling around the country. I've been competing in all kinds of tournaments, and I've been doing pretty well with the Deathwatch, especially considering that they are the worst ranked faction statistically. But so far the rumors are, and it does look like it from Games Workshop, that Deathwatch are officially going away. So it doesn't look like I'm going to have a choice. I'm going to be quitting Deathwatch. So let's take a look at the article. I'll give you guys my opinions on what Games Workshop is doing, and we'll talk a little bit about where I'm going from here. While billions of guardsmen and redacted space marines fight the Imperium's wars on the front lines, a powerful yet mysterious presence safeguards it from within. Few loyal citizens would admit to having ever heard of the Inquisition, let alone witnessing its agents in action. But those who have known to fear the invisible hand, for they have the ability and, more importantly, the will to destroy whole planets in the Emperor's name. So there is a little video, but we're going to take a look at the full article. The Inquisition rarely take to the field in person, but should a need arise, they can draft entire armies to their service. Some latch on to larger Imperial forces and operate from the sidelines, while others assemble companies of auxiliary troops in cohesive armies. And both approaches can be found in the new Codex Imperial Agents. So there was a lot of speculation that the redacted Codex was Imperial Agents. That was my guess. A lot of people were saying it was going to be Emperor's Children, but it seems more viable that it's going to come at the end of the edition, like the last few Chaos, like independent faction codexes did. And honestly, I gotta say that it's pretty cool that there's an Imperial Agents Codex coming. There's not a lot of people that play Imperial Agents. It's not really a viable army. This looks like it's going to be basically the beginning of that. What I was currently doing with Imperial Agents is I was running Deathwatch Black Spear Detachment, which is the Deathwatch specific detachment. And then I was using quite a few of the actual like Deathwatch kill teams. Tried out a bunch of like the special Deathwatch exclusive characters and everything. And to tell you the truth, they were underwhelming. That's why a lot of people weren't playing Deathwatch. But there is a lot of stuff in the Imperial Agents Index. There's some cheap chaff units. Obviously, the assassins are really good. Most people are taking them in Imperial Army. And you basically had the option to take like 2 characters and then also like 2 just regular like troop units in like any Space Marine army as allies. Alternatively, you could play Imperial Agents on their own, but basically nobody was doing that because it's really not like a fleshed out army. And there wasn't really a way to ally in Imperial units into an Imperial Agents army. You could take like 3 armigers or 1 big knight, but aside from that, you didn't have a lot of options. So for Games Workshop to basically go from like the least played faction, maybe going away, to trying to like buff up the Imperial Agents and then turn that into a viable army seems like an interesting choice, but I'm not fully ruling it out. This means that Codex Imperial Agents can be used in 2 distinct ways: to add a specialist inquisitorial aid to your army, or build a dedicated inquisitorial force of your own. Those familiar with the current rules will recognize assigned agents army rule. And that's the rule that allowed you to take basically like 2 retinue units and then 2 character units in your army, which allows a certain number of units from the book to be added to the Imperial armies. The roster has been expanded to help fill out your Order Xenos, Malleus, or Hereticus presence, with Deathwatch kill teams joining the retinue units. So back in the day, there was basically like 3 branches of the Inquisition: Order Xenos, Order Malleus, and Hereticus. And now it looks like Deathwatch are going to be joining the actual Inquisitorial Agents book, and those will be part of the retinue units that could be taken into any other like Imperial factions. The new Codex also features Watchmasters, Corvus Blackstars, and Watch Captain Artemis, returning to the range after an absence. So you include a full detachment contingent in any Imperial army, complete with leaders, squads, and transports. Those with full Deathwatch Space Marines armies needn't worry. They can add the Deathwatch specific units to a Space Marine army of black-clad units like Intercessors and Terminators, melding the strong foundations and detachments of Codex Space Marines with themed specialists from Codex Imperial Agents. Alright, so this is an important paragraph right here. So basically now, in the new Imperial Agents Codex, they're going to have Watchmasters, Corvus Blackstars, and Watch Captain Artemis, as well as some Deathwatch specific kill teams. You'll then be able to take those in any Imperial army that you want. So previously the Watchmasters, Corvus Blackstars, Captain Artemis, and the actual kill teams were only available to like a Space Marine army, and then you could choose if you want to play one of the like generic detachments from Codex Space Marines, or you could choose the detachment specific to the Deathwatch, which was featured in the index. And it sounds like basically what they're doing is allowing you now to take the Deathwatch specific characters and units that they call the retinue units into any Space Marine army via the new assigned agents rule, which is technically an expansion because before you couldn't do that. And then also it looks like the Deathwatch index is going to be going away, and then you'll be able to basically use Deathwatch as vanilla Space Marines. At least that's what it sounds like to me. Grey Knight Terminators and Battle Sister squads show up in the requisition category. Priests and navigators are joining the party too, to provide guidance in both spiritual and very literal sense. So inside the Imperial agents, it sounds like you'll be able to take Grey Knights Terminators and also Battle Sister squads. And those will basically be considered like requisition units, which I would imagine is going to allow you to take like a certain number of those inside of your army based on how big it is. But Deathwatch is not listed under that portion of the book because they're already going to be included in the Imperial Agents Codex. So Imperial Agents, assigned agents. So this is the army rule. If your army faction is Agents of the Imperium, then in the select detachment rule step, you can select one of the available detachments from the book as normal. So you're going to have like probably 4 to 6 detachments available. If your army faction is not Agents of the Imperium, but every model in your army has the Imperium keyword, you can include Agents of the Imperium units in your army, even if they do not have the faction keyword you selected in the Select Army Faction step. In this case, the maximum number of Agents of the Imperium units you can include in your army depends on the battle size as shown below. So incursions, you can have 1 retinue, 1 character, and 1 requisition. Strike Force, you can have 2, 2, and 1. That's at 2,000 points. And then Onslaught, you can have 3, 3, and 2. That is 3,000 or more. Note that you can include Agents of the Imperium dedicated transports units in such an army as normal, but each unit must start the battle with 1 or more units embarked within it, or it cannot be deployed for the battle and will count as having been destroyed during the first battle round. Alright, so what does this portion actually mean? It basically means that you're going to be able to take 1, 2, or 3 retinue units, which will now include the Deathwatch kill teams, in any Imperial army. You can also have 1, 2, or 3 characters, respective of size, and then the requisition units are going to be 1, 1, and 2 as well. So the way it sounds to me is if you're playing an Imperial army, but you're not using the Agents of the Imperium detachment or like specific codex, you're going to be able to take like 1 Terminator unit, or 1 Battle Sister unit, or 2, depending on the game size. And then you're going to be able to take 1, 2, or 3 characters as well. And that's now going to include the Deathwatch characters. So it sounds to me like if you're playing Imperium, but you're not using the Agents of the Imperium Codex, you're going to be able to take 1, 2, or 3 retinue units. And those are now going to include the Deathwatch kill teams. You're also going to be able to take 1, 2, or 3 character units, which is likely going to include the Deathwatch characters, as well as assassins and inquisitors. And then you're also going to be able to add in 1 requisition unit, which is going to be like your Terminators or your Adeptus Sororitas Battle Sisters. And then to go along with those units, you can have some of the dedicated transports, which will probably include like the Corvus Black Star to transport around like your kill teams. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products, including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now, back to the video. Should you instead wish to field an entire army of Imperial agents, the Codex offers 4 new detachments which add their own detachment rules, stratagems, and enhancements to mix, allowing you to support a full inquisitorial force with no limitations on the number of units you can take. 3 of these detachments are themed around major inquisitorial Ordos, while the 4th represents these forces with significant Imperial Navy backing. So you're basically going to have like the 3 different inquisitorial like themes, and then also an Imperial Navy themed one. The Imperial Fleet Detachment can call upon a wide variety of support options to redeploy, avoid harm, and fight in close quarters. It's a great way to experience the entire spectrum of an Imperial agent's army, as it has relatively few restrictions on who can be targeted by its stratagems. This way, assassins can fight alongside rogue traders, inquisitors, and more as you wish, while Navy breachers and Arbite enforcers single out critical objectives to secure at all costs. So basically, this is the Imperial Fleet Detachment rule at all costs. At the start of the command phase, you can select one of the following to apply, and you have 2 choices. Eliminate at all costs. Select 1 enemy unit on the battlefield until the start of the next command phase. Each time an Agents of the Imperium model from your army makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, add 1 to the hit roll. So you'll have an army-wide +1 to hit against a single unit, and then acquire at all costs. select one objective marker on the battlefield until the start of your next command phase while an agent of the Imperial unit from your army is within range of an objective marker. Improve the leadership and objective control characteristic of models in the unit by 1, and models in the unit have a 5+ invulnerable save. So you basically pick one objective, and then until the start of your next command phase, you're going to have +1 leadership, +1 OC, and also a 5+ invulnerable save while you're within range of that objective marker. So those are basically going to be like your 2 special detachment rules. You can either kill one unit a little bit better, or should I say hit it a little bit better, or you can pick a certain objective and then get like those various power-ups. And that will be the detachment rule for the Imperialis fleet. The other 3 inquisitorial detachments will each have their own detachment rules to provide like some different options and ways you play your army. Now this isn't like particularly amazing because giving your agents of the Imperium army +1 to hit against a single target is definitely worse than something like Oath of Moment that's going to give you like full rerolls to hit. Alternatively, having +1 OC, +1 leadership, and a 5+ invulnerable save, it's not going to be like particularly amazing, but if you think about this on like certain units, it could actually be good. So we'll have to see how this develops once we see like what's actually in the book and what you can apply this to, but overall seems decent. Alright, so next we have the Blessed Wardings. While the bearer is leading a unit, models in that unit have a 6+ invulnerable save. And then Power of the Rosette. Each time you target this model's unit with a stratagem, roll a d6. On a 3+, you gain a command point. So previously, like Inquisitors already had the 3+ gain a command point rule. So now they're going to convert a 6+ invulnerable save to the squads they join also. Not particularly amazing, but it's technically a buff because they already were basically just being used for the command point and like some of their like weapon options. It's not just the rules that are new though. Those who read the Arcs of Omen, the Lion, may remember a certain Inquisitor getting back in action after all the mess that went down around Wormwood. Inquisitor Lord Inquisitor Coteaz has a vast network of agents to do his bidding. But when matters require the personal touch of a massive demon hammer, he takes to the field in a huge suit of gleaming power armor. Alright, so we have a new Inquisitor Coteaz model, and I gotta say, this guy looks like he's straight out of Stormcast. His head looks too small for the body, and just overall underwhelming. It's cool that they're making a new model for him, but he just definitely is not great. The eagle is still pretty cool and is going to have some special rules, I'm sure. Probably going to be the equivalence of a token, but maybe it'll be like something that fights as well. But I definitely think they missed the mark on this one, as the old Coteaz model was absolutely amazing, but was only really available in like metal or resin. And this one is definitely subpar. The proportions are definitely like off, and there's a massive lack of detail on this model. It really just looks like a mediocre kit bash of a Stormcast Eternal. Alongside him, there are 3 new Battleforce boxes will get you started with the diverse array of units suitable for the Ordo Xenos, Ordo Malleus, and Ordo Hereticus. They're great ways to start out with one of the thematic detachments in Codex Imperial Agents, and Coteaz himself is available first in the Ordo Malleus box. Alright, so the Ordo Xenos box is definitely like a Deathwatch themed box. So you have a unit of Star Striders, an Inquisitor retinue, Inquisitor Draxus, a Navigator, 5 Deathwatch veteran kill team, and then a Corvus Blackstar. So this is if you're playing an Imperial Agent's army, and obviously you can take anything from the book, which is going to now include Deathwatch. It looks like a little over like $300 in MSRP value in this box set, so not bad. Probably going to be priced somewhere around like $220. So decent amount of savings, as typically the Battle Forces are like pretty good value relative to what Games Workshop normally offers. Next we have the Ordo Malleus. This one's got Coteaz in it. It also has 5 of the Requisition Terminators, an inquisitorial retinue, and then we see one of the priests, Pius Vorn, the Caluxus anti-psyker assassin, and then it has 1 more of the inquisitorial retinues and a chimera. So an interesting mix of like different stuff here. A little closer to like $330 to like $350 in value. So again, nice savings overall. Definitely looks like a mishmash of like stuff here. But we'll have to see like how all this plays out, what special rules they actually get for like the various other detachments, if it'll be good. And then finally we have the Ordo Hereticus. So this one has an Imperial Agent's retinue, a priest, a witch hunter, a battle sister squad, an immolator, and then also 10 of the Arbites. And again, looks like to be around like that $335 mark, somewhere around there. So decent savings. It is worth note though that each of these has 1 vehicle in it, and then they've also leaned in kind of heavy on the characters. A lot of like the Blackstone Fortress characters are featured in this box set, and most of those are not selling for like retail value as they've been readily available over time. So there's definitely like a little bit of a gap between the perceived value in these box sets and the actual value in them, but overall looks like some nice discounts. They're definitely themed around like hunting the heretics, hunting the Xenos, and like the various other themes that you would go along with for the different detachments. So we'll have to see what those other detachments look like, what the various army rules that correspond with them, the enhancements, the stratagems, all that good stuff. So regardless of whether you send an entire army of agents of the Imperium out into the field, or add some support to your favorite Imperial faction, you'll be able to engage in secretive shadow operations with in-depth Crusade rules available and a Crusade force that includes even a single Agents of the Imperium character. There's a lot to cover in there, and the rules are extremely thematic and fun, so we'll return to shadow operations at a later date. So the Crusade rules are basically like for playing a campaign. Finally, don't worry Grey Knights players, this is only the first chance you'll have to send your Terminators off on a demon hunting crusade. There will be a dedicated Grey Knights Codex on the way next year, but there are still a few factions to get through before the Knights of Titans start to peek their shiny battle plate over the horizon. So basically that last throwaway paragraph is pretty important because that's reassuring the Grey Knights players that they are actually getting a Codex. Obviously Adeptus Sororitas already has a Codex, but I think that basically cements that Deathwatch as their own independent sub-faction or like chapter of Space Marines is going to be gone. I don't know when or if they're going to be getting rid of the actual Deathwatch detachment or if that's still going to be available, but it looks like the rumors are true and the Deathwatch is getting rolled up into the Agents of the Imperium. So as somebody that spent hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars building up a Deathwatch army, traveling around the United States to play in all kinds of tournaments, and going out of my way to try to get ranked in the competitive scene, at first this was definitely a negative thing and kind of brought me down, kind of bummed me out. The fact that Games Workshop is essentially forcing me to quit playing Deathwatch, at least as how we know it, and I've spent a lot of money building up the unique kill teams, especially the Gravis ones, as you basically have to buy like 5 different box sets and then use a couple models out of each box to build up a kill team. It's definitely a bummer that I'm essentially being forced to quit my like detachment, or at least that's how it looks, but I'm definitely not quitting 40k. And the truth is, I'm probably just going to be playing my existing Deathwatch army with whatever changes I have to make as a generic Space Marine army and just using one of the detachments out of the Space Marine book. Gladius is obviously really good. Some of the other detachments are pretty good as well. And while the army is not going to play the same way, I think overall getting another Codex is definitely a good thing. Agents of the Imperium are definitely fun, and a lot of the elements inside of it, especially like the assassins and some of the cheap chaff, are still useful and probably going to find their way still into my Space Marine army. But I'm still going to be playing Deathwatch. I'm just going to be playing them as generic Space Marines, it looks like. So let me know what you think of the changes. There's definitely been a lot of people that are bummed out about this. But the fact of the matter is, most of the models are still going to be available as generic Space Marines with black armor, just playing in whatever detachment you want. Alternatively, you can lean in on the Agents of the Imperium book, which could be good, who knows. But even if Deathwatch goes away altogether, I think that just opens up more options. Like for instance, taking somebody like Manius Calgar or Bute Gulliman, maybe taking Azrael or the Lion and just painting their armor black and basically just making them match my current Deathwatch army, making some minor changes to like what units I actually use as far as Deathwatch specific kill teams, and then just leaning in on one of the generic detachments with my Deathwatch army and pretty much just some better special characters in it. Now, as far as the competitive scene goes, I don't think I'll technically still be classified as Deathwatch, especially if I'm taking those specific characters. So that's definitely going to be a bummer. Hopefully they at least run it out to the end of the season in January and allow like the people that are ranked to still compete for like best Deathwatch army inside of like the sub faction. But regardless of what they do, it's not like I'm putting my models up on the shelf. It's not like I'm quitting 40k altogether. I'm just going to have to adapt to the changes. And I know that that can be uncomfortable for people, especially at first. I think it's all about the outlook that you have on life, on games, on just everything in general. Me personally, I'm a glass half full guy, so I always try to look on the bright side of stuff. One of my favorite things about Deathwatch is not only the lore, but also that they were like the worst ranked faction. And let's be real, even like the big tournaments I was going to with like 200 plus players, nobody else was even playing Deathwatch. So while I may have to like bust up a couple of my teams, paint up like the third member of a squad, or stop using like some specific stuff, the fact of the matter is basically nobody was playing Deathwatch. So overall, this is probably a net positive, as we're at least going to get like some new rules, a couple new models, and it's going to either push us towards the vanilla Marine detachment or at least give us like some different options, which is probably going to be better. And honestly, I really like how my Deathwatch army is looking, and I've already thought about adding in some of like the special characters from the different chapters and just painting them black and then playing as whatever other chapter I wanted and just have it be like those special characters have temporarily joined the Deathwatch, which is pretty lore appropriate. Now, obviously you're not normally going to see a Primarch or like a chapter master joining the Deathwatch, but you know what? The game is ours. The lore is ours. We can do whatever we want with it. And as long as you're following the actual rules to play in the game, it sort of just opens us up for like extra creativity. So let me know what you guys think of the rules changes so far, what you think of these 3 new battle forces, and what you think of my outlook on this. It does look like I'm going to be quitting Warhammer 40,000 Deathwatch and probably just leaning in on like the generic rules, maybe even playing the Agents of the Imperium instead. but I'm definitely not going to be quitting 40K. I'm definitely not going to be quitting the competitive scene. I've been having the most fun I've ever had after 30 years of wargaming in Warhammer, going to tournaments. And I really think that Games Workshop has done a pretty good job with 10th edition. And Warhammer 40,000 in general is in the best place it's ever been. It's the most balanced and most fun it's ever been. It's also got the most players, the most hobbyists, and it's the biggest it's ever been. So if you haven't been following along over on TableTop Bros, go over there and check out the Escalation League and some of my tournament results and recaps. There's also a bunch of other content on there as well. We've got an upcoming Age of Sigmar Escalation League that's going to be getting started real soon. I'm going to be playing kruleboyz. And definitely let me know down below some of like your initial reactions, emotions, feelings, as well as what you think of these box sets. And as always, special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the channel. Check out the link in the description to save 15% on Games Workshop products. And make sure to tell them that Warhammer Man sent you. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man. And while initially I was a bit bummed out, I'm definitely looking at this as just a new opportunity to mix things up. And I'm out of here.